Welcome to our channel. Today, we bring you a story of emotional depth and historical significance, a tale that connects the anguish of Princess Diana's tragic end with revelations that have been suppressed for years. This is not just a story about the past, it's a poignant exploration of the lasting scars that still haunt the royal family today. The evening in question was soaked in a palpable melancholy, a quiet assembly of royal confidants, investigative reporters, and insiders gathered in an elegant parlor within an opulent mansion. The air was thick with expectation, and as the shadows of the evening grew longer, each person present understood that the words spoken would forever alter the carefully controlled narrative that the palace had built over the years. Lady Sarah McCorquodale, Diana's elder sister, had been quiet for decades, but now, at long last, she decided that silence was no longer an option. As she sat before her audience, her face etched with grief, she revealed what she had kept hidden for so long. Her confession was not just about the death of her beloved sister, Diana, but about the hidden truths that had been buried beneath layers of royal secrecy. Lady Sarah's revelation would forever alter the way the world viewed that tragic night in Paris, the night when Diana, along with Dodi Fayed and their driver, Henry Paul, perished in a car crash. It was with a quiver in her voice that Lady Sarah began her confession, an inquiry that had haunted her for years, one seemingly insignificant yet profoundly symbolic detail. Why had Diana not fastened her seatbelt that fateful night? For Sarah, a staunch advocate of safety and an unshakable belief in protecting loved ones, this question was more than just an enigma, it was a source of unimaginable torment. Why had Diana, a woman renowned for her caring heart, ignored such a fundamental precaution? The question echoed with both sorrow and defiance. Lady Sarah shared that throughout her life, Diana had been steadfast about securing herself in the safety of a seatbelt, a habit that symbolized her commitment to self-preservation. Yet, on that fateful evening in Paris, that simple act was neglected, and it became the tragic catalyst for a chain of events that led to the untimely demise of the people's princess. As Sarah spoke, the room fell into a deathly silence. Her words resonated deeply within each listener's heart. She was not merely recounting a series of unfortunate events, she was challenging the very institution that had failed to safeguard her sister. Each sentence seemed to demand accountability, demanding that the people who had been entrusted with Diana's life reassess the circumstances surrounding her death. Sarah's sorrow, tempered with anger and a desire for justice, was a clarion call that the truth could no longer be hidden. As Lady Sarah's story reached its most poignant and heartbreaking moments, attention shifted to Camilla Parker Bowles, whose reaction had long been scrutinized by the media and the public. Camilla, who had long been vilified as the alleged cause of the breakdown of Charles and Diana's marriage, now found herself at the center of a new wave of intrigue. Despite her usual composed demeanor, something shifted within Camilla when Sarah's confession reached its most critical point. Witnesses who were present that evening noted the subtle but unmistakable change in Camilla's expression. Her typically unflappable exterior began to crack. When Sarah detailed Diana's tragic final moments, a flicker of emotion passed through Camilla's eyes. For the briefest of moments, her face betrayed a tremor, a slight widening of her eyes, as though she had been confronted by an undeniable truth. It was as if she had momentarily become aware that the carefully crafted image of composure she had maintained for years was no longer sustainable in the face of the painful revelations. Though she said nothing, the silence that followed spoke volumes. It was not a moment of explosive outbursts or public confrontations, but rather a subtle acknowledgement of something deeper. Perhaps Camilla was grappling with the weight of guilt that had been simmering beneath her surface for so long, a guilt born from a past filled with deceit, secrecy, and the collapse of a royal marriage that had been broadcast to the world. In order to truly understand the significance of that evening and its aftermath, we must first delve into the complex and tumultuous history of the Spencer family. Diana's upbringing, her relationship with her parents, and the subsequent dissolution of their marriage all played a critical role in shaping her future and her personal struggles. Born into British aristocracy, Diana's childhood was marked by both luxury and conflict. Her father, John Spencer, and her mother, Frances Shand Kydd, went through a contentious divorce that left deep emotional scars on Diana and her siblings. This early trauma, the emotional upheaval of a broken family, laid the groundwork for Diana's later challenges with self-worth, loneliness, and a sense of identity. Her struggle to reconcile her public image with her private life would be a lifelong battle. Despite her outward radiance, Diana suffered in ways that few could truly comprehend. Behind the elegance and compassion that made her beloved worldwide lay a soul burdened by depression, bulimia, and the overwhelming pressure of royal duty. Lady Sarah, too, had her own complicated relationship with Prince Charles before Diana's entry into his life. In a candid 1978 interview with Time magazine, Sarah made it clear that she had no romantic interest in Charles. Her words were clear, witty, and pragmatic. She was unwilling to compromise on the notion of genuine, uncoerced love. Little did she know that her rejection would set the stage for Diana's fateful involvement with the prince. In 1977, Diana first met Prince Charles during a family gathering. It was at that moment that the seeds of a romance, which would captivate the world, were planted. However, this fairy tale would eventually unravel. Behind the glamorous public facade of their wedding in 1981, Diana and Charles' relationship was marked by deep discord and infidelity. For Diana, the intense passion she felt for Charles was genuine, but her marriage to him became increasingly strained as the years went on. The presence of Camilla, a constant figure in Charles' life, only intensified the suffering Diana endured. The tragedy of that night in Paris is well known. Diana, Dodi, and their driver, Henry Paul, were pursued by a pack of relentless photographers in a high-speed chase. The car, a Mercedes, crashed into a pillar inside the Pont de l'Alma tunnel, killing all but one of its occupants. The official investigation attributed the accident to human error and the reckless actions of the photographers. However, the details surrounding the crash, including the issue of the unfastened seatbelt, sparked a wave of speculation and conspiracy theories. Sarah's insistence on the importance of this detail, the seatbelt, added a new layer to the tragedy. Was Diana's failure to fasten it a mere accident, or was it something far more deliberate? The question remained unanswered, but Lady Sarah's words were a stark reminder that the official story did not tell the whole truth. Could it be that the sequence of events leading to Diana's death was influenced by forces beyond mere chance? The question hung in the air, unanswered but burning with the intensity of its implications. As the days and weeks following the confession unfolded, the media and the public turned their attention back to Camilla. Her response, or lack thereof, became the subject of intense scrutiny. Her eyes, which had once been shields of composure, now betrayed something far deeper: a struggle with guilt, a recognition of the role she had played in the royal family's troubled narrative. Camilla, who had spent years cultivating an image of dignity and grace, now found herself at the center of a much larger, more complex web of secrecy and moral ambiguity. The brief flicker of emotion that passed through Camilla's eyes that night spoke volumes. For the first time, she appeared to confront the reality of her involvement in the dissolution of the royal marriage and the public perception of her as the other woman. Her silence, rather than her words, became the focal point of a new investigation, not into the events of that night, but into the emotional toll that secrecy and betrayal had exacted from her. Could it be that Camilla, too, had suffered in her own way, burdened by the weight of her actions and the consequences of a life lived under constant public scrutiny? In the aftermath of the confession, the investigation into the events surrounding Diana's death reignited with renewed vigor. Journalists, royal observers, and independent experts all turned their attention to the details of that tragic evening, analyzing every piece of evidence and witness testimony. The details of Diana's death were once again up for debate. Was it truly an accident, or was there something more sinister at play? For many, Lady Sarah's confession marked the beginning of a new chapter in the story of Princess Diana, a chapter in which the public was no longer willing to accept the official narrative without question. The tragic events in Paris, once thought to be a closed chapter, became an open wound, one that demanded to be healed by the light of truth. As the months went by, the legacy of Diana's life and death continued to resonate with the public. Her memory, once overshadowed by the tragedy of her death, emerged as a symbol of compassion, selflessness, and the vulnerability of the human spirit. Lady Sarah's confession had not only shed light on the events of that night in Paris but had also reopened a national dialogue about the nature of truth, loyalty, and justice within the royal family.